Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the DELCO Cross Country Podcast, the great people of Delaware County. Thank you for all the support over the first 3 weeks of this podcast. We are officially in week 0 of the cross country season. That's right, we have the Oakbourne Relays coming up today. If you're listening to this on Friday, the Oakbourne Relays are coming. I will likely have a breakdown of that meet later on next week. That might be my only episode next week going into Labor Day weekend. This podcast has a lot of different things that I'm going to throw in here. I'm going to talk about the Oakbourne Relays. I'm going to break it down with the teams that are involved. And I'm going to have a segment called the Coach's Breakdown and what specifically as a coach I would be looking for at this meet. The other thing I'm going to talk about in this episode is the unfortunate ending of the Foot Locker National Meet and the effects that this could have on teams down the road. And speaking about national championships, I'm talking about national caliber meets and races and athletes and teams. And I break that down with the one and only Greg Thomas. And I'll be honest, I wasn't sure if I was going to release that portion of the podcast. I was planning to release it possibly as its own standalone. It was very off the cuff, no script. Just trying to say, hey, if we were in your position as a coach or as an athlete, what would we do in your position if we are working ahead with top athletes or top teams to figure out what we're going to do to the next level? I thought Greg brought great insight to that. If that is not your cup of tea and the first part of the episode is your cup of tea, please just hang on to the first couple parts of the episode and if you want to finish it off, that's perfectly fine. I trust everybody. I trust you guys. I trust my listening audience absolutely, completely. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the Oakbourne Relays. That is happening today, if you're listening to this on the release day of Friday. Week 0 of the cross-country season, and it's actually smart to get ahead of the game with DELCO's being so early this year on September 27th. You're looking at 4 boys teams and 3 girls teams. Prior to even the DELCO scrimmage this upcoming Tuesday, racing for the first time at the Oakbourne Relays. On the boys' end, you have Penncrest, Strath Haven, Ridley, and Garnet Valley. And on the girls' end, you have Penncrest, Garnet Valley, and Ridley. As a coach in the Coach Breakdown, this is what I would be looking for. I'm looking for my varsity 7. I'll be honest. Like I stated in the first episode, there are a lot of teams with front-heavy athletes. You can have 1 or 2 athletes, and then there might be a falling off from 3 to 7. It's very early in the season to figure this out. It's very early in the season to put things together, and this is one way to do it, and it's a fun way to do it. You put them in a relay. It's a fun way to find out. Throw them in the relay, mix and match athletes if you have to, or even put your top athletes together and see how it is. For instance, like Penncrest, they have a mix and match. They're mix and matching their top 8 within these relays. They have top star Rowan Carr teaming with senior Nate Weinrich, who might be the 5th and 6th man of Penncrest this year. But it's also nice and fun to have these 2 upperclassmen running together throughout this race. Also, the other thing that I am looking at is how Ridley and Haven, they're 2 teams I've been watching throughout the season, or I want to watch throughout the season, because they do potentially have the depth to do something nice. Had my eyes on them since early on, since that week 1 way too early prediction podcast, so I kind of want to see things. For Strath Haven, my eyes are on Jonah Wimmer and Owen Goldberg. They are in race 2. Wimmer is the top returner for a Strath Haven team, with senior Owen Goldberg, who ranks as the returning 5th man. But it's interesting, I don't see Hogg or Kennedy in these races at all, and they would be their returning 2 and 3 men in that race. So we're going to be looking for some depth with Strath Haven in that race, and maybe we see how they work out, because Kennedy and Hogg, they were neck and neck last year at district championships. Ridley, they did something where they would combine their top runners in a race. For instance, they have Oma Matheos and Paul Aluwa teaming up in race number 1. These 2 should be a fun race to watch in this one, as I know it was fun to watch Jackson Kane in the same exact race last year. It will also be fun to watch Nick Lancy and Bobby Nizvazio team up in race 2 and see how those two do as well. Garnet Valley on the boys' end, they should have a good race in relay 1 with Isaac Mellinger and Emmanuel Velez. Interesting to see how those two team up and where Garnet Valley is going to sneak in. On the girls' end, I am very interested in this race because what you're looking for is you're looking for depth. So I'm interested in that team from Penncrest with Cassie Jones and Caitlin Crumlish. They're in race 1 for Penncrest. They will match up in a fun race versus Cece Kane and Leah Starr of Ridley, two competitors that are definitely going to give a nice little challenge to Cassie Jones and Caitlin Crumlish. But you also have to notice that a team in Garnet Valley is going to be up there as well with Rachel Hicks and Avery Lustgarden. Those relays are going to go head-to-head. That is going to be fun to watch, fun to see the results, and fun to see where they end up in that one. Race number 2, 3, and 4, it looks like it's all about depth for those three teams as they are looking to figure out where their varsity lineup is going to be. So they lined up race 2, 3, and 4 to do it. They also lined up their JV races to figure that out as well. So it's important to see where depth is going to be for the Penncrest, Garnet Valley, and Ridley girls all together. And it's going to be interesting to see how deep these two teams get. While I was on the topic of Garnet Valley, I do want to give shout-outs, complete shout-outs, to the Instagram takeover machine that is happening and that has taken over the DELCO XC pod Instagram over the past week. The girls in Delaware County are absolutely killing it on these takeovers. Last week it saw Avery Lustgarden of Garnet Valley take over for a day. You had Camel Baxter of Springfield take over on Sunday. Then Thursday you had Agnes Irwin. You had the whole team taking over the podcast that day. Friday you have Kendra Williamson, and I'm interested to see how she does on this with the Episcopal girls. And Saturday you have Evelyn Awad from Haverford. Again, Haverford took over last year. It's fun to see these teams want to take over this Instagram account. If you want to take over the account, please send me a DM at DELCO XC Pod on Instagram or on Twitter. I do not call it X. I will refuse to call it X for future reference. That is my coverage of the Oakbourne Relays. The next thing I really want to get into is Foot Locker Nationals. So that will be on my next segment. Get ready to talk more about Foot Locker Nationals. What was interesting to see is that as I record this podcast, it was announced that the Foot Locker Nationals meet for cross country was canceled. In other words, it is now completely shut down. And it's funny because as I look back and I look at results of different national championship races, you do have a history of teams who choose to go to different nationals, which is right. They have the ability to choose. Kevin James chose Nike Nationals. I believe Gary Martin chose Foot Locker Nationals. You have the ability to choose different nationals that you would want to go. So earlier today, it was officially announced that Foot Locker Nationals was no longer. An announcement was made from Foot Locker on Mile Split to our FLXC community. After thoughtful and careful consideration, Foot Locker has made the difficult decision to conclude the annual Foot Locker Cross Country Championships FLXC. As we look to the future, this strategic decision reflects our ongoing commitment to evaluating where we can make the most meaningful impact for our business, our customers, and the communities we serve, including the running community. For the past 45 years, the FLXC has been more than just a race. It has been a celebration of passion, perseverance, and the boundless potential of student athletes across the country. As the longest running cross-country race in the nation, it has brought together generations of runners, coaches, families, and fans, and helped build one of the most inspiring communities in high school sport. We extend our deepest gratitude to every athlete who towed the line, every coach who guided their team, and every partner who helped bring the event to life. Your enthusiasm and dedication have been instrumental in making FLXC an extraordinary event year after year. Your role in uplifting the sport of cross-country running and its athletes has truly been invaluable. Although we are closing this chapter, our commitment to the running community remains strong. We plan to continue to support the sport through focused initiatives across our stores, such as Champs Sports Run Club Series, which are designed to foster community and an active lifestyle. The legacy of the FLXC will always be part of our story and yours. With great appreciation, the Foot Locker team. Now the question is, where are these athletes going to go? So now it was down to, hey, it was Foot Locker or Nike. That's where they were going to go. Interesting enough, New Balance announced this year that they were going to host a national championship meet. Ironic it happened right with Foot Locker canceling, right with Foot Locker stopping, but hey, life goes on, and it seems like these meets do as well. So it looks like the New Balance Nationals meet will be in Huntsville, Alabama this year, and I believe this is the first ever national championship hosted by New Balance in cross country. They've taken indoor, they've taken outdoor, and now they're going to step their foot, pun intended, in the cross country course when it comes to New Balance Nationals 2025 cross country. Should be interesting to see where these teams go. I know the non-DELCO team is racing. That's Lower Marion. For those who don't know, the boys are heading down to Huntsville, Alabama already. That's already in their schedule. That was built in prior to any of Foot Locker even canceling. So it'll be interesting to see what these other programs decide to do, especially with their top athletes as we move into a potential national championship level for certain teams in Delaware County.
Welcome back to the DELCO Cross Country Podcast. This is kind of an off-the-cuff podcast. With you, as always, this is your host, Kevin Key, and I'm joined by Mr. Trifecta, Greg Thomas, three-time, one of the 5 people who won the 800, the mile, the 3200 DELCO championships. Mr. Trifecta, as the former teammates would call him, the Rat, Greg Thomas. Welcome back to the podcast, and this is off-the-cuff. Literally, we just recorded a whole nother podcast for an hour. This is an off-the-cuff one in which we're going to be talking about some of our top athletes and what our next step is in Delaware County.
Thanks for having me, Kev.
So, over the past few years, Gary Martin was the name from Archbishop Wood, and Gary Martin's a great guy. His coach, Coach Paul, is one of my good friends at this point, and we've developed a relationship through Catholic League, cross country and track and field over the years. Gary Martin was clearly one of the first Pennsylvania kid to break 4 minutes in the mile. A lot of spotlight was on Gary his senior year, but people don't know the focus that went into his freshman year, how he came out of nowhere at District 12 championships. Brian McGarity and I have had that conversation a number of times, a former Bonner athlete of mine, that really pushed it, and then COVID hits his sophomore year, and then you have COVID cross-country championships, which we could have a whole nother conversation about. And then his senior year happens, and he's unstoppable in reality. And the question is always, what do you do with these unstoppable top athletes on your team? We've seen it with Gary Martin, and he went a route of, okay, my focus is going to be, I'm going to put a lot of things on my team. I'm going to try to bring my team to the next level. And that's kind of how Coach Paul directed things. But you also, on the side, you have athletes who, we're focused going to be on the team, and then we're going to do some individual stuff as well. So even though I run for a certain school, I'm going to do some side stuff as an individual. And it does leave a lot of question marks moving forward of what a coach should do or what an athlete should do in these bigger meets. Like, we have 2 right now in Delaware County, at least. We have Rowan Carr on the boys' end, 15:04 5K athlete, and you have Kendra Williamson on the girls' end, who went 18:06 at Paul Short, and could potentially break 18 this year.
Unbelievable.
Again, 2 unbelievable athletes, 2 unbelievable top athletes, and not to mention all the amazing other athletes that we still have in Delaware County. So many that like it's hard to imagine how DELCO's is going to be this year. But you have so many amazing returners in general. But I want to talk about like the next step for these athletes. What would your plan be? Like you were at one point an unstoppable athlete, but as a coach, our goal, Tom Kennedy's goal was always the team is the focus.
Absolutely, which I think is it's hard. This is a tough discussion because I think. First of all, the challenge falls on the coach the most. The athletes are the athletes. You're out there, you're the horses, right? You're the ones running, you're putting in the work and all that stuff. But you kind of know what it is you're supposed to do. For the coaches, you get some of these athletes. I mean, Rowan, 15:04 is like to be under 15 minutes, which is very likely for you, is crazy. It's crazy. Talk about the evolution of the sport, but not to take away from all that is, or take away from what you're doing. You came in as a freshman, you haven't let up. I think personally, whatever your coach is doing, he's not wrong, right? I don't know if you look elsewhere for training, if you look into other things. I'm sure you're doing cross-training stuff. I'm sure that you do the core work. I'm sure that you do the strengthening, all that stuff. If you're not, I can't imagine how much faster you would be. The hardest part is, like I said, for the coaches, what to do with the athletes that are kind of in no man's land in practice, right? There's someone who's just really not pushing them. Just for round numbers, you have a kid on the team who's running 4:45s in mile repeats, and then the next closest person in line to him is 5:15, just to say, right? Then there really isn't such a benefit for number one. Yeah, I would say there's benefit for number two because they're gunning for number one, right? They see, even though it's a 30-second gap, they're seeing that they can make progress, right? Because even 2 seconds would be progress for them. But there's no one for that front runner to chase. The front runners in this sport have the hardest time because it's them and their mind. You're pushing for something that you can't see. Maybe you've imagined in your head. You imagine other runners, or for instance, 15:04 is so fast. You should be imagining chasing college kids because that's how fast you're running. So, but to not get too far ahead of yourself, it's hard to maintain that when you're on your own, right? It's easy to just get caught up in, okay, I'm doing enough to win or whatever the case. I don't believe that's the case for you. I believe it was the case for past runners that I've known, for myself included. Enough to win was enough. The sky really is the limit. Especially in this sport, seconds come off the harder you work, you're doing the right things. For the coaches, it works in such a great way because what you're doing now is you almost are pushed into learning more about the sport, learning more about the science, learning more about what to do for these athletes who are in another realm. Which only benefits you, and not to mention only benefits the team too, right? It's only helping all those other runners progress, the new runners coming in. Now you have a greater understanding and experience in the sport where you can now pass that along to these freshmen at an earlier age. But there is a challenge. There absolutely is a challenge, coming from somebody who had won races, being out in front is not as easy as people think. And I would also say that it's hard to not only have humility in those positions, but keep interest, which is a tough thing. I think for me personally, if I lose interest in something, like if my heart's not saying, oh man, this is it, or I love doing this, or I'm not waking up and thinking about doing that, or I'm not looking forward to it in some way, then I lose interest, and then all of a sudden you trickle off, and you're not giving your best. I think that happens with a lot of athletes across all sports. Speaking for myself, I know it happened with me. Even having being surrounded by team was huge. But I have teammates that if they had the chance to call me out on not giving best effort, especially my junior and senior years, they would do it, or they have done it, and they've let me know it. And is it a big deal looking back? No, not necessarily. It's helped build me to some extent, but I won't pretend that didn't trickle into the rest of my life too. I know I'm kind of going on a tangent here on this, but I think for you runners, every individual who wants to better themselves, who wants to step up to the next level, you have all the resources at hand. Look it up. Look up how to be better. Look up, stretch for 15 minutes longer after runs. Look into diet. If you're doing everything right and you're not eating right, look into that. There's so many things you can do. Coaches as well.
Well, and even the coaches, it's always like when I was coaching, it would be like, let me find that answer for you.
Yeah,
I didn't always have the answer as a coach, and even as a teacher, I don't always have the answer.
Sure.
But I'm going to guide you in the right direction. Paul Stareklis, I can't pronounce his last name, never could, from Archbishop Wood, now at Nazareth Academy. When he was coaching Gary Martin, he would ask the right questions and do the right research, and then he would talk to coaches who he trusted. Like, I would have conversations with Paul. Now, I'm not in any way crediting myself in helping him with Gary, but I'm helping with a different mindset of like, hey, I've always been about team first, but I think that was always been a Tom Kennedy thing.
Definitely.
And having Tom Kennedy's mentorship pushed me to being a coach, pushed me to a different level. I always went with, okay, it's always team first, but we have this individual that could be one of the best ever to run on a cross-country course, could be the best ever could even take that step and progression up into another level. What can I do to help build him? I'm going to tell you, Delaware County coaches, they talk to each other and they try to build off of people who they trust. I hear from different coaches all the time, hey, potentially what would you do? Like, if you had a situation, what would you do in this situation? Yeah. And it's just the fact that they're trying to build the knowledge to help you as the athlete. You don't always see the work that your coach is putting in and the effort that your coach is putting in because they're so straight-faced with you because they're supposed to be. If they're straight-faced with you, they're not always telling you what you want to hear. They're telling you what you need to hear. And a lot of your coaches are out there, they're trying to find that next level. Now, what I would do if I was in a coaching situation here, because it does happen with coaches, where you're like, okay, I have a top athlete. My team we're good. We're not great. What would I do in this situation? I'm finding meets for my team to go to.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not just finding meets for
benefit all.
an individual. I'm going to look for meets for a team.
Yeah.
Tom Kennedy was known to do this. He would find the Great American Race, which I believe was in North Carolina. He would find ways in which he could take the team to different places and focus as a team and not just the individual. He had individuals. He had Kevin James, who is one of the best in Delaware County history. But he was able to build around and like, hey, I'm not going to focus on Kevin here. I'm going to focus on the team being successful. Now, he had a great team, probably the best in Delaware County history, that went 5th in the nation with Dan Savage, with Ernie Batone, with Kevin James. But you also had to think, hey, how can I help better the team in general? Because at one point, the Ernie Batone graduated. The Danny Savage graduated. And then it's now, okay, what am I doing with Kevin James?
Yeah.
And what am I doing with these top athletes? And I know that Paul Stareklis had this issue with Gary Martin, and it was always kind of giving choices at times too, and it was always team first to see where our next level is going to be. You could take things and you can go onto those extended postseason runs, but talk to your coach about, hey, how do I get there?
Yeah. How
do we make the next step forward? I mean, Kennedy was known for this. You had Nike cross-country national championships, and you had Foot Locker cross-country championships. Foot Locker was individualized. Nike was team-wise.
Yeah.
And if you notice where Kevin James went every year, it was Nike.
Yeah.
He tried to get his team into a national championship on the Nike end for years. I guess a lot of it is your philosophy as a coach, but also building the culture and getting kids to buy in on, hey, we're trying to get you to that next level, but we're also trying to get the rest of the team. So coaches, I know you're stuck in a tough position sometimes as well. Athletes, I know you're stuck in a tough position because you're like, hey, I just want to get better. Talk to your coaches and they'll do the research for you as well. I mean, you have right now we are in a society in which you can get information faster than ever before. I thought this happened 5 years ago. Now it's faster with AI. It's absolutely insane how much information we can get faster than anything ever. And it's only going to increase and get better. Now, there's a difference between AI, artificial intelligence, and human intelligence.
Absolutely.
You have to put the human into the artificial.
Yeah, true experience. Yeah.
So you have to, like, you can read what artificial intelligence brings you, but you have to have your human beliefs, your human thoughts, your body is literally on the line on these courses.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good little side note that we should touch on is you can find that, right, there's an abundance of information out there for you to learn, but it might not fit what you're doing, right? Like, for instance, an example I would give is if you're running 50-mile weeks and you have a great training program, it's working for you, you're PRing year after year in every event, right? And you enjoy what you're doing. And all of a sudden, you look something up and it's saying to break whatever, we'll say 4 minutes in the mile, you have to do this particular thing. You know, let's stick with longer distance. Let's stick with this 15:04, which, by the way, I have to know, live on podcast, why not? Is that a Delco record, 5K?
So he ran it at, I think, if you're looking at Delco records, you're looking at potentially doing it at Rose Street Park versus.
Okay. But has any other Delco runner
ever
run?
I believe Rowan is the fastest Delco runner.
It's got to be. You know, once again, shout out to you, Rowan. You're doing an amazing thing. But I'll use you as an example again, right? I don't know what you're doing, but let's just say you're running 50-mile weeks and you want to be better. You want to break 14:30 in the 5K, and you want to look up how to do that. So you start looking up all these runners who have run sub 14:30, and all of a sudden you're seeing, you know, Ernie Patone was one of those guys. Great training. But if you just jump from 50 miles to 100 in the blink of an eye without building up to and allowing your body to adapt, it's going to end up hurting you in the long run. So information isn't always the greatest thing, right? Knowledge is awesome. To be able to learn is awesome. But wisdom is knowing to do with the knowledge. So, like, just because, this is what we want to do, you know, for instance, I very highly doubt that Ernie Patone's coach was just saying, all right, you know, you broke 14:30, now it's 14 minutes, and then they just jumped. They kept doing what they were doing. You know, I know Ernie, one of the hardest workers that I have ever come around. I had the fortune of running against him in my later down the road college career. When I ran at Eastern, he was running at Widener. He was in another realm. You know, we didn't compete. We just ran on the same courses. But I know for him, in his mental game, he loved just getting in 100-mile weeks. Healthy 100-mile weeks. And he would get a slew of them in throughout the entire year, and it would always pay off at the end. He wasn't stepping up to, it wasn't, oh, we're doing 100-mile weeks, let's do 150-mile weeks. It was doing that same thing. It was ingrained in him. Yeah, he might pick up paces at times, do different workouts, and so on and so forth, but it really was just honing in on what he was already good at. And it showed. You know, I don't know if Ernie ended up breaking 14 minutes in the 5K on the track. I'm almost certain he did. But he was also just so good at every other race. So to that point, my point being is, you can find the information, but you got to kind of test the waters, right? Don't just jump in full force. Don't just up your mileage. Don't just start doing crazy strength programs where you're all of a sudden deadlifting 400 pounds. You know, there are ways to get better, but you got to let the body adapt a bit too.
Well, and this goes for Kendra as well, because, I mean, you're speaking specifically to Rowan, but it is the top athletes, Kendra and Rowan here, who's running. Kendra's running phenomenal. I mean, 18:0 whatever.
Yeah. I mean, you're looking at 40 seconds faster than the next fastest runner at Delco Championships last year. That's no man's land. You know, no woman's land, you should say, right? You're by yourself. It's hard. It's hard to be up there and to want to. You could easily turn around, look back, and say, all right, I got this in the bag, right? But I think in this sport, the runners that love this the most, they're not really racing anybody else. You know, they're racing themselves. They're seeing how good they can be. And I'm speaking for you guys. I don't know if you want to run at the next level, but in running by yourself and pushing yourself, what happens is when you get to the next level, all of a sudden you're surrounded by runners because everyone is running. At least if you go to a school that is, in tone with what it is you're doing, you're going to be getting smoked by people that you don't even remember what that was like. You don't remember what it was like to be a freshman. And everyone's running the same times and same paces, and the differences in who's winning in races is the things like who's doing more core time, who's sleeping better, who's literally getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep every single night and taking care of themselves.
And to answer your question, yes, Rowan is the number 1 athlete in Delco history on the 5K. Kendra is number 7 on the list, and one Greg Thomas number 20 on the list. Yes, 20 in the all-time Delco history list. But remember, courses are different, things like that are different.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And I mentioned,
not saying our course was harder, but it was.
I mean, you put a 15:36 up at Bulldog Invitational in 2005, so I actually remember that race pretty well at this point. But we mentioned finding those meets. I talked about the one meet in North Carolina, Great American Cross Country Festival. Kennedy also found the meet in DC, the DC XC, in which he would have athletes be able to step up as well and find different ways in which they can perform, and still, because at that point he's looking, hey, we're a state-ranked team, how do I get higher? We're a nationally ranked team, how do I get higher?
Yeah.
He's finding these different meets out there with those top competition, but he found it for his team more than just the individual. So like Kevin James's top race, 15:11 at DCXC in 2014. I cannot believe it was that long ago, because I remember that race as well. But once again, these top athletes, Rowan Card number 1, 15:04, Kendra Williamson number 6 right now, tied as the top all-time 5K races on a cross-country course. But like I said, this is a hard pill to swallow sometimes. One of the things as a coach is adapt to change. And if you're like if you're in an old way, like this is how I've always done it, that is like the death of a program. That is the death of a school. This is the way it's always been done. That's a quote I hate, because everything changes.
Yeah.
And if you're not willing to adapt, then the sport is going to surpass you by far. I mentioned on the summer running podcast from last week that being able to adapt summer running programs to an athlete who wasn't running or doing the work, and admit it not doing the work, and sitting down with them and saying, okay, this is what we're going to do now. So you can't jump in where you were. This is what we're going to do now. We're going to shorten the runs, and then we're going to build you up to August. Sometimes you have to change that piece of paper that you have in front of you. Yeah. No, your workout might be great for that day. You may have planned it a month ago. That workout changes. Yeah. Especially as the athletes grow and the athletes change, you can see what the athlete needs to work on.
Yeah.
So sometimes if you're like, oh, they were slightly slower in that hill, you're going to hit the hills pretty hard. If they were slightly slower in that first mile, guess where you're going to be running? You're going to be pushing not mile repeats, but probably half mile, 400 repeats to try to get everything back up. So another piece of advice is adapt.
Yeah, know yourself, know where you're at. Yeah, be observant to what's going on with you. Be vocal to your coaches. Talk about where you felt weakest. It's not when you set out to run a race, you don't want to be focusing on taking notes, right? But I think if you run a race and you give it everything you have, you're going to come across that line, and after you kind of let that adrenaline stop flowing a little bit, you're going to remember certain points of I did take it a little bit easy there, or I pushed a little bit too hard there, or a runner came up on my shoulder and it got me to sprint for 20 seconds. I don't know why I did that. Those types of things, they will stick out to you, the things that you probably need to fix, and if you have a great coach and a great staff, because let's be real, not every coach can see every second of every race. But if you have a great staff, they're going to see hey, he looked like he was struggling a little bit on that second hill, or in mile 2, late in the mile, it looked like he let off a little bit. It looked like he was trying to save for mile 3. Those types of things too, But that information, that being observant and aware of yourself is huge. Don't leave it all on your coaches. They all do a great job, like I said. But if you know what's going on inside you at these certain points, there's no better teacher. No one can tell you what you're going to be best at or what you're going to be worse at. Like that's you that does all that. No one knows what's going on inside your mind or inside your body.
Yeah, having those reflective conversations after a race, no matter if you won or lost, if you're ticked off or you had the best race of your life, having that reflective conversation with your coach definitely helps. It's something I always look to do. Is I always had a reflective conversation with my athletes, and I said, okay, what did you do well?
Yeah.
What do you think you need to work on? What was the best part of your race? What was the worst part of your race? Yeah. And we'd have the conversations when you had cooler heads. Like, because after a race, if you're angry, you're not going to be in the right mindset to have a conversation about the race.
Yeah.
But when cooler heads prevail, you have the conversation with the coach. I used to do it at cross-country meets, but after their cool down. So we'd have the cool down, they calm their bodies down, they calm their heads down, and then we'd have the conversation, and I would say, that's exactly what I saw. And it'd be, if I saw something, that's exactly what I saw, but I also saw this.
Yeah.
So you have those reflective conversations about where we go to the next level. Coaches, I know it's a tough time period. I know that you're looking to do what's best for not only your individual athletes, but your team. And athletes, your coach is looking to do what's best for you, as well as your team. Remember, it's not just always, this sport isn't always about one person. This sport, cross country, relies heavily on how the team performs. That's all I have for today's, like, literally just thrown together podcast on this one. I hope you enjoyed it. Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram at DELCO XC Pod. Give us a 5-star review. Tell us how we're doing. It helps the algorithm. So please help the algorithm as much as possible. Send me a message on email if you want to, delcoxc@gmail.com. I am pretty quick with my Instagram messages back and forth. My email I need to get better at, but coaches, you all have my number at this point, I think. So you please feel free to text, call, whatever. This is the end of the podcast. As always, this is Kevin Key. I'm signing off. I'm not going to give Greg the opportunity to give another shout-out to a team. Shout-out to all the teams. Get out there. Enjoy the summer. Season is upon us. You are getting ready for your first races. Get out there and move.